Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's E-G-G-B-U-R-T, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
It is the BJ Show. I'm Shelley, and he's not John. Did that make any sense?
I can't. When the music's playing, I couldn't hear you there, Brad.
Oh, okay.
Did you say you're Shelley?
I'm Shelley, and you're not John.
That's so, I love that intro, Brad. And I also loved on the YouTube videos how you would have a picture of you like as a decrepit old man, and you'd have a picture of Shelley as like some dashing young supermodel.
That's right. That's the way it was. Okay. Years ago, briefly, I will tell this story. Years ago, I went to Las Vegas for one of the National Association Broadcasters Convention. And at the nighttime, I'm downtown in the old, what they call the Fremont Street Experience, which is the original part of Las Vegas. And I happened by a place called Glitter Gulch, which is no longer there. And essentially, it was a topless club. And it was one of the original topless clubs. So I'm walking by, and the bouncer says, "Hey, buddy, no cover charge tonight." So I go, "No cover charge?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Come on in." I go, No. And he literally grabs me by the arm. "Hey, come on in. You'll enjoy your time." So I go in, and as I walk in the door, the bouncer on the inside says, "By the way, no cover, but there's a 1-drink minimum." Okay, and I ordered my 1 drink. It was $20.
Of course, so it's a $20 cover charge.
Right, it's a $20 cover charge. Okay, here's how you get rid of all the protesters. There's a company called National Rent-A-Fence. Have you ever heard this before?
No, I haven't.
Okay, and matter of fact, I'm a nerd. I notice this kind of stuff. It used to be that construction sites, they didn't put up any kind of thing. Now you see construction sites with the trailers, with the blinking lights and the cameras and stuff like that. And they have a fence, a portable fence by National Rent-A-Fence, which comes in and puts in these fences. It's like a 6 feet tall portable fence that they put in, and they secure it so that they secure the construction site so people can't come in at night and on the weekends and steal stuff and vandalize things like that. So here's what you do. Any of the protests, the university just calls up National Rent-A-Fence, and they get on the PA system and they say, "Attention, attention, protesters. We appreciate the fact that you're protesting, and we want to keep you safe because there are anti-protesters who could approach. So therefore, we are going to put up the protective fence so nobody can get in to bother you. But the only problem is you can't get out for any reason, and no in and out." And they put the fence up, okay? And after about 6 hours, when they can't, get DoorDash, and they can't get Uber Eats to deliver, and they can't get Domino's to deliver their pizza, they all go, "Well, this sucks. We're getting out of here." What do you think?
Yeah, but then it's just a one way, right, Brad? Like once they leave, they can't come out.
Right. It's sort of like Hotel California.
Well, why don't we try that? Could you pitch this maybe to I don't know. Could you get some smelly hippies to go to Lindenwood or something? Like start small and then take this to a bigger university?
Don't you find it interesting that the number of protests is directly proportional to the amount of tuition that's charged?
Oh yeah, well, and a number of folks. I think it was Joe Carter, who's a state senator from Granby in the southwest part of the state, has pointed out there's still no protests at trade schools.
Well, there's
still no protests at technical schools.
There's no protest at 270 Tech up in North County. There's no protests at Merrimack. There's you mentioned Lindenwood. There's no protests at Lindenwood. It's like all these. And the crazy thing about this is, I guess when you got money to burn, and once again, in full non-concealment of facts, John is a WashU graduate. My mom and dad are WashU graduates. My daughter is a graduate of the Washington University Law School, okay? So once upon a time, Washington University was a very, prestigious local university, and now it's to the point where I would think, even when you went there, you were probably the minority as far as the number of people. I mean, as far as being from St. Louis, most of the people from out of town, right? Most of them are from the East Coast, right?
Yeah, and when I was there my freshman year, only 10% of students were either from Missouri or Illinois. So consider that, and also consider that that would include, really good high schools up in Chicago. So very few kids were from the St. Louis area. There were 2 kids my year who were from the Hazelwood School District. There was a young black girl who got one of the minority scholarships. So I was the only student who was there. Well, I shouldn't say by merit, but I was there. I was the only student from Hazelwood at WashU during my year there.
You want to hear a little fun fact that you've never heard about, the Brad Hildebrand you don't know about?
I do want to hear it.
In my senior year in high school, I won the Washington University Science Fair.
No way, really?
Yes. Actually, it was interesting. There was a tie between me and another guy, and he was smart. He went off to be a doctor. I went off to become a stupid broadcaster. He's probably made more money in his first year of medical, of being, a doctor than I made my entire career of being in the radio business. But yeah, Washington University was at the Francis Field House, isn't that what it is? Is it?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right, Francis Field House, and the interesting part of it was that you put your project, and my project was there, and then the judges came around, and you weren't there. The judging was done with nobody in the place.
Oh, yeah,
and then the next day, the judges came back, and you had to be at your project. And the judges would ask you questions. And I'm not bragging when I tell this story, but a guy comes up to me, and mine was an electronics project, and he's asking me 42 million questions. And I had no idea who the guy was. He's just one of the judges. I knew he was one of the judges because only the people with projects and judges are allowed in at that particular day. And he's asking me all these questions, and I'm sitting there going, who is this guy? So after like 15 minutes, he says to me, you don't know who I am, but I'm the Dean of Engineering School here at Washington University, and I would like to offer you a 4-year full tuition scholarship to study electrical engineering at Washington University. And I said, no way, I'm going in the radio business. I'm going to SIU Edwardsville. How about that for a story?
Are you serious? Did that conversation really happen?
I am serious as a heart attack.
No way.
I am serious as a heart attack. I was offered a 4-year full tuition scholarship. Now, of course, when I go home and tell my mom and dad, my dad who was an engineering graduate, a civil, my dad looked at me, Lowe's. So he offered you a 4-year full tuition scholarship, and you said no? I said, yeah, I said no. My dad just sort of turned and walked away, didn't say.
And this message brought to you by Southern Illinois' recruitment department. Yeah.
Right.
I thought you were going to say, Brad, that you actually had the conversation with Nikola Tesla.
No.
Because, in your era, he was still alive and kicking, right?
No. Well, no, he died.
I'm joking. I think he was long gone.
No. I was still alive then because he died in the 40s. I was born in 35, so. Hello?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm here. I'm just thinking. Well, I'm saying he would have been dead before you were in high school. Is what I'm saying.
I don't know. He was such an interesting guy. He might still be around. You don't know. He might.
And he has 2 car companies named after him. Not just Tesla, but also Nikola. Remember the whole Nikola controversy?
Right. Okay. A lot of other stuff to talk about in politics. Now, by the way, the Mary Elizabeth Coleman video is now officially up. I sent you a link on it. Did you see it?
I did. I didn't get the WashU article you sent me. Although over the weekend, Brad, I figured out why you like Mary Elizabeth so much.
Why is that?
Here's why. You speak on the show. You've spoken often about how your mom was one of the most influential people in your life. You see where I'm going with this?
Right.
How she was very strong.
Right.
How she was women's lib before there was women's lib.
Right.
And she was not one of those moms that constantly coddled you and said, oh, my Brad wouldn't do anything wrong. So you take that, Brad, and your first conversation with Mary Elizabeth, within 30 seconds, she corrected you on something you were wrong about. I think immediately something subconsciously was like, Mary Elizabeth is a lot like my mother.
Well,
and I think that's why you like her.
I've told you the story before. In my generation, my mom was one of the outliers. My mom had a college degree, and my mom had a degree from Washington University and went on to get a couple other degrees like my dad. We don't know. We gave up on figuring out how many degrees my dad had. He got his original degree from Washington University, and then he worked for the remainder of his career, 25, 26 years at SIU Edwardsville. He was the campus civil engineer, and he got free tuition because he was full-time faculty. I remember going to, this is actually a funny story. We went to one of his graduations at SIU, and my dad was sort of at times a cantankerous kind of guy. If things didn't go his way, he was like, okay, we're leaving. And we went to the graduation, and something happened where he goes, I'm not doing this. And we got in the car and we left. We literally went to this is when they had the Mississippi River Festival. They had the tent, if you remember that. Were you ever over at the MRF? You're too young for that.
No, I wasn't.
Okay, you're too young for the MRF. Okay. Anyway, we got down under the tent. Something happened, and it ticked my dad off. And he says, "I'm not sticking around. We're leaving." And we got back in our car and we went back home, and that was it. But anyway,
standing on principle.
Yeah, my mom was always upset about the fact that. And she was in education. She was a special educator. She had a degree from Washington University in speech pathology. She worked at the Central Institute for the Deaf, which I believe that part in time was part of WashU. I don't know if it still is or not anymore. Anyway, she was very frustrated by the fact in education she can never be anything higher than a department chairperson. She can never be a principal or assistant principal or, God forbid, a superintendent or administrator. Now you see that all over the place. And she had a saying, which I can still hear her saying, I don't care where we were. If we went out to a restaurant and the meal sucked or we got bad service somewhere, she would look at me, she'd turn and she goes, you know what the problem here is, don't you? And I would always say, no, Mom, I don't. And she would say, some dumb man is in charge. If a woman ran this place, it would be in better shape. So I grew up with that. Now, when my friends came over to my house, my mom would say to them, what are you studying at school? Because she was an educator. Are you going to go to college? Have you thought about what you want to do? Have you thought about a degree program? And when I went over to my friend's house, their mom was, do you want ketchup on your hamburger? That was the
extent of their development conversation.
And nothing against that, but see, my mom freaked out my buddies because they would say, like, how come every time I come over to your house, your mom's quizzing me down about where I'm going to college at? I go, because that's my mom. That's what she did.
Yeah.
That's what she did. But she was, and to this day, that's why, and see, to a certain extent, you sort of said that somewhat facetiously about the Mary Elizabeth Coleman thing. I have tremendous respect for women who are in charge and are good at what they do. Perfect example. My boss, Karen,
Wente.
No, that's Patty Wente.
Karen Carroll.
Karen Carroll. Imagine, I can't remember that name. Karen Carroll. There were guys when Karen Carroll was the general sales manager, when Ron Grubbs left, he left to go start his own agency or something like that. They promoted Karen to general manager. There were guys that literally quit the radio station. They're not working for some women, working for women. And there's a story about J.C. Corcoran that I'll tell, that J.C. Corcoran at one point in time was at KSD, 93.7 KSD, and it was owned by Gannett Broadcasting, which is no longer, or Gannett Radio, which is no longer in business. They got out of the radio business. And the station was taken over by, I can't remember the name of the company, it was Easy Communications or AM/FM, whatever it was at the time, that owned Y98, and Karen Carroll was the boss. So all of a sudden, Karen Carroll became JC's boss. And he did not like it. Matter of fact, he had sound effects of like a dinosaur, like, and every time he'd talk about the boss, he would play the sound effect. Okay, so Karen had an interesting husband by the name of Kurt. And this is not me making this story up. I've heard J.C. Corcoran tell this story at least twice, where Kurt was an interesting guy, I believe had been in prison at least once, I believe twice. So Kurt was not the kind of guy you messed with. So J.C. tells the story of one day during Christmas time, he's out at Chesterfield Mall, and he's just walking around, and he looks up, and coming the opposite direction is Kurt, Karen Carroll's husband. And their eyes meet, and JC turns and start to walk back the other way. and Kurt runs to JC to try to punch him. And JC literally runs through Chesterfield Mall with Karen Carroll's husband chasing him, runs out. I think he ran down the escalator in Dillard's, went out to his car, got in his car, and left the parking lot real quick. And Kurt was chasing him through the parking lot trying to punch him. So that was...
But so you're saying it had a happy ending.
Well, but see... I loved Karen. Karen was to the point where she was blunt and to the point. There was no black and there was no gray with her. It was all black and white. You either do well or you did poorly.
But in the category of Patty Wente, with the stories that you told last week, wouldn't you identify those as traditionally male leadership qualities?
Well, but see.
Or stereotypical. I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying you would stereotype that most men would be blunt and direct, and the knock against women executives would that, well, they would vacillate, they wouldn't make hard decisions, they'd be too worried about gaining consensus. What you're saying is that Karen Carroll and Patty Wente both had strong personalities and would make bold decisions and would be blunt, and they wouldn't use flowery language and they wouldn't beat around the bush.
But the crazy thing about that was that in both cases, I never worked for Patty Wente. I just was essentially like a vendor to her.
A friend,
a vendor, and then we turned out we have a friendship, and then turned out that I would disagree with you because, quite honestly, the people that the guy that Patty replaced was like Mr. Milquetoast. The guy was named Rainer Steinhoff, and he was a concert music fanatic or something like that. Because
yikes! That says
because at the time KWMU was a classical music station. Patty was brought in to blow up the classical music and play NPR, which is what she did. And matter of fact, she took NPR away from WSIE because we were the NPR affiliate over at SIU Edwardsville. We were the original NPR affiliate in the St. Louis area, 88.7. And Patty was to the point where, Patty was like, bar the door. She would kick in the door throwing a hand grenade and then come in with her M16, fire off a few rounds and see who was left. That's the way Patty was. And Karen was not like that, but Karen was to the point where Karen was unflappable. I mean, no matter what happened, Karen was in charge. And I always appreciate that about her because I saw some of my male bosses being, I tell you a bizarre, weird story. A bizarre, weird story about how we called, I don't know if it's still a term or not, but we used to call them prize pigs. And the prize pigs.
Oh, yeah. And they would, let me interrupt. These are the guys, because I'm trying to remember, you told us before, the guys who would always just try to dial in every time and win something?
Well, they were professional contesters, and it sort of destroyed the whole narrative of what you were trying to do with contests. You're trying to get new people, and these people were listening to they had. See, the interesting thing is the reason that a lot of these radio stations don't give prizes away and they don't play trivia games anymore. You know what the answer to that question is? You know why they don't do anymore?
Why not?
Because of the internet. Because like Dave Strauss, when he used to do the Mr. Trivia, on KMOX, and he went to KTRS, to the point where when he gave out these stupid trivia questions on the air, when he gave the trivia questions on the air, everybody would just grab their phones now and just
that's how easy it is.
Right. That's why if you go to a trivia night, they always say phones are not allowed.
I remember, Brad, listening to KMOX while we're down memory lane. I remember listening to KMOX with my grandma, and in the mornings on Saturday mornings they would have 20 questions. And I remember sitting there in elementary school, like with a trivia book, like hoping that I would be able to pull the answer from a trivia book, get through at 436-7900 and get on the air. But now now every answer's just on Google.
Right. So it's to the point where that's how it's like, that's how things have changed. And the same thing. Matter of fact, it's interesting because I heard the other day, I was listening to Z1077. Yes, I do listen to all sorts of crazy different radio stations. And they do run contests, but it's interesting how they do it now. A lot of these stations have this thing, I think they call it, Z1077 calls it their hot mic app or something like that, where on the app for the station, you can actually send an audio clip to the DJ. In other words, you can say, "Hey Jim, play so-and-so and so-and-so for me." So what he was saying was he was going to whatever they were going to give away, that they were going to give something away. And he said, send me your audio. And he used some term, I can't remember. It's like their own like hot mic or something like that. And use your Z1077 app and hot mic me and tell me blah, 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 blah. So what he would do is he would just sit there in the studio and he'd have all these recordings he'd go through. That's the interesting thing. That's what KWMU does, they don't have any live call-ins anymore. Well, like when they do, when they have, I've heard it with Jason Rosenthal, but the other lady, she rarely takes anything, but they have pre-recorded little bits. Let's go to Jim, and he called in earlier and he had this question. Hey, why is it that all you people sound the same on NPR? Oh, by the way, I have to tell you, yesterday morning, holy cow, I heard an interview on KWMU on NPR that blew me away. You know who Nancy Mace is?
Oh, yeah. She's from Charleston, South Carolina. She's a congresswoman from there, yeah.
She absolutely positively destroyed one of the NPR hosts. I mean, it was
wow.
It was like Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan in the ring, trash talking each other. It was amazing, okay? And I'm thinking of her, God, I love this. This is great.
Yeah, she's got no patience for the liberal media. By the way, for the sake of posterity, Brad, you referred to him as Jason Rosenthal, which is probably a human being, but he's actually Rosenbaum.
Well, I never make a mistake. Whenever I call,
neither do I.
Whenever I call Jason Rosenthal, I always call Mary Elizabeth Coleman. So I never ever make a mistake about stuff like that. Okay, we're going to take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling: A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?